Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm excited to go ahead and welcome our next speaker, Jenielyn Padernal. Jenielyn is a director of e-learning integration for Cypher Learning and a passionate educator with more than 20 years of experience in the field. In 2010, Jen graduated from Technological University of Philippines with a master's degree in management. In 2011, Jen joined the Center of Innovative Learning program of DLSUD as the Virtual Learning Environment Coordinator. Let's go ahead and welcome Jen on board.
Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Just trying to make sure that I cover all of the time zones. Salam alaikum. I am very happy to see you, although I'm not really actually seeing you all here, but I'm happy to be with you. This is it's such an honor, always a great opportunity to be in the presence of amazing educators globally, as always, and be able to share with you some of the insights on how we can leverage on e-learning to build a disaster-proof education. This is actually one of my favorite topic when I'm doing presentation and talks, because I am an advocate of disaster-proof education. In this session, I will try to share with you some of the things that we can do to start building a disaster-proof education in your school. And at the same time, I'm also going to be sharing with you some of my personal experiences on how I benefited in using e-learning, through e-learning, on how I build my teaching and learning disaster-proof. As you may know, probably, just to a little bit of an introduction about myself, I am Jen Padernal, and I'm currently the Global Director of EdTech in Cypher Learning. And I'm based in the Philippines, and Philippines is a disaster-proof prone. It's a disaster-prone country. And as an educator who lives in a disaster-prone country, I have had my own fair share on how calamities and disruptions in classroom are affecting teaching and learning. So today, that's what I'm going to be sharing with you. How can we leverage on e-learning on building a disaster-proof education? I know that all of us have experienced the struggle of the past year, almost 2 years now. So this discussion will also focus on continuous learning despite the natural disturbances. As I mentioned, I know that we all had our fair share of how the pandemic affected all of us. It's been more than a year, almost 2 years now, going 2 years since we experienced this extraordinary phenomenon. And we know that it has greatly impacted the education sector. I know that all of the educators who are here right now can relate to this. And please believe me also when I say, I feel you. Not only that I know how you feel, but I feel what you feel. Because as an educator, just like you, I experienced the same struggle you've had when the pandemic happened, that all of a sudden we need to do everything online. And I know the struggles of a lot of schools, a lot of school leaders, a lot of teachers, a lot of students. I feel you. I know the struggles. Probably the only difference between me and some of the other teachers is that I embraced e-learning early on. Years ago, I've already embraced teaching with technology, training with technology, and learning with technology. It's kind of like saying I have been preparing for situations like this, not just me, but also my students and the school where I used to teach here in the Philippines. It's not that I'm saying that I know the pandemic will happen, but as I mentioned, I live in a country that's kind of like disaster prone. Just to share with you, these are some of the natural disasters that we're experiencing in the Philippines. We have typhoons. That's more than 20 times a year. So a year when it visits us. So that's more than the number of calendar months or calendar in a year. We have earthquake. 2 years ago, we experienced a volcanic eruption. We have monsoon rain that when it happens, in a matter of minutes, some areas gets flooded. So we have severe flooding. Apart from, some regional conflicts that from time to time would happen, but Fortunately, now it's not happening anymore. But we also have holidays, non-work and non-school holidays. So all of this are contributing to disruptions in classes. And we know that when classes are suspended due to typhoons, due to, well, whatever natural calamities are there, most schools are required to make up for the lost instruction time with extra school days for students and extra teaching days for teachers. And more often than not, based on experience, in the case of the Philippines, it's happening sometimes on weekends, Saturdays in our case. So this is what's happening when natural disaster strikes. And a day lost in the classroom before is considered a day lost in learning. And pre-pandemic, or before the pandemic happened, when natural calamity strikes, or before we embrace e-learning, this is what's happening. When a calamity strikes, these are the challenges that we're facing. Makeup classes. And what are the challenges of doing makeup classes? Rescheduling is one of the many challenges that we're facing when we have to reschedule a class because there's a calamity or a disruption or a reason to cancel classes. Teachers must organize a common schedule in which all students affected by a cancellation or suspension of classes can be gathered or can gather together and attend the makeup classes. And sometimes this is, or more often than not, this is very challenging. Then once a teacher found a schedule for everybody, say majority of the classes will be able to attend the makeup class, the next challenge would be finding a classroom. Once a common schedule is found, the next hurdle, finding a vacant classroom where you can hold your makeup classes. And then once you found a classroom, the next challenge would probably be, hey, I have a classroom. I know that everybody can attend, but getting everyone to attend the makeup classes, especially when you're in higher ed, is also going to be a little bit of a challenge, especially when you're doing it in a non-school days, because, you know, teachers, students and parents would always have some reasons where their children cannot attend the makeup classes. And we can understand that. It's a non-school day. So, and then once you get everyone to attend, let's just say we solve that hurdle of getting everybody to attend. The next hurdle will probably be keeping the engagement alive and level up in the classroom, because it's a makeup class, non-regular class. Most of the students would probably be inattentive. They won't pay attention. Their mind is probably, hey, it's weekend, or hey, this is an extra class. I should be, you know, somewhere else enjoying a school break or a day break in school. So these are just some of the challenges that we're facing before when we have to reschedule or to do makeup classes. And I believe that this is still being faced by a lot of schools, not just in the Philippines, globally. These are the common hurdles, the common challenges. We're now, and because of the pandemic that happened last year, still ongoing up until now, we are seeing how the education process is disrupted and brought to a standstill in many, many countries. We know that other countries are now already opening their classes. They're doing face-to-face classes already. But, you know, the virus is still here. The threat to our health is still here. And we still need to be proactive on that part. We are experiencing this disruption, and we need to do something about this. And we know that despite the challenges, our goals as educator remains. And this is that we want our students to be future ready. We want continuous learning to happen. We want our students and learners to keep developing their skills, despite all of these challenges that we're facing at the moment, despite that most countries and most schools are still teaching remotely. Ultimately, we want to make sure that no child is left behind. That's our ultimate goal. And please allow me to share with you, before I move to the next part of the discussion, these are just some of the most sought after employability skills, because I was talking about the goals that we have in, you know, making sure that even though we're teaching remotely, and despite these natural calamities that we're experiencing, that we are still able to develop the skills of our learners. What you're seeing on the screen now are just some of the sought after employability skills, some of the student standards that is provided to us by many organizations, and the future ready skills that we need to develop among our students. These are the skills that we now probably are wondering, hey, Jen, how can we still do this when we seldom or we haven't seen each other face to face for a very long time? Some schools are opening, but they're also doing blended classes, or sometimes sometimes hybrid. And then there will be times that when they open, they do face to face, but somebody gets infected, then they have to close school again. So these are kind of like some of the questions that we have in our mind. Yes, we need to develop future ready skills, but how are we going to do that? This is primarily the reason why I am advocating disaster-proof education. Disaster-proof education, as I define it, is a proactive measure that will make teaching and learning continue amidst the calamities, both natural and man-made. So it's a measure that also avoids taking extra days for makeup classes. But ultimately, the purpose, the objective of disaster-proof education is to make sure that learning continues. Learning happens anytime, anywhere. And one of the best ways by which we can do that is if we completely embrace e-learning. Though we know that e-learning is really nothing new, it's been here for a very long time. But this is one of the many ways by which we can start disaster-proofing our education system, disaster-proofing the education that you have in your schools, in your universities, or anywhere. And as I mentioned, I wouldn't really say that e-learning is something new. E-learning has been there for a long time. Most schools or some schools just embrace it early on, and some or most probably just started noticing e-learning or paying attention to e-learning when the pandemic happened, when COVID happened. So it's kind of like, for me, it's bittersweet. I am an advocate of technology. I am an advocate of e-learning. When the pandemic happened, almost everybody is into e-learning, is into technology for teaching, is into learning management system. I'm happy about that. But at the same time, it's bitter. I'm sad because, it has to take a pandemic for us to realize the importance of e-learning in education. Okay, so this is kind of like something that we really need to look at and understand better the importance of e-learning, not just during the time of pandemic or calamities, but this is really where we're going. This is the future, or this is the present. We need to understand that e-learning is our partner in bringing education to every classroom or to every home for that matter. So some of the importance of e-learning that I'd like to share with you, for one, it's student-centered. It's more focused on the needs of the learners, how they will learn, how they will access the content, the resources, the materials that we want to share with them as educators or teachers, and how easy it is for them to understand the learning materials and implementation easy. So e-learning is a combination of our interaction with our students. Before we'd say it's face-to-face and online, but e-learning is our tool. This is our partner, so that our student gets to have access to the learning materials that we want them to access to, so that they can continuously learn. Another one is, through e-learning, everything is accessible. With internet and with the devices, the proper device or any device, the learner can get access to the learning content that we need them to access. Aside from that, learning can happen literally anytime and anywhere because of e-learning. It's also cost effective because everything that we need to share with our students, they don't need to print it. Remember the time when you need to print all of the handouts, all of your materials? With e-learning, we can go paperless and just host our content and materials and handouts into a learning platform, a learning management system for one. So for schools, this also means less travel, less electricity to be used in school. The school where I used to teach, they literally save millions of pesos in printing the course syllabus and the materials because they embrace e-learning early on, and a lot more importance and advantages of e-learning. Learning can be personalized. Learning can be customized based on the learning needs of the students with the proper use of the right tool, which I will share with you later on. Learning can also be inclusive for everybody, no child left behind. E-learning can support differentiated instruction with a proper tool. It can support adaptive learning also with the proper features of the learning platform that we're using. And one also of the things that I'd like to point out about e-learning is that it's not only being done in school. It's also being done in a lot of organizations, business industry. This is now the industry trends. Even the future workplace of our students are into e-learning. E-learning for employee, e-training, mobile learning, gamification, video-based training. So all of these are being done in the industry. And this is the place where our students will be working in the future. So imagine embracing e-learning. It's not just advantageous for us teachers and for students to have access to the learning materials, but this is also somehow preparing them for their future workplace. So this is kind of like really important. And having said that, probably you're also asking, so Jen, how do we start? What are the things that we need to do to get started with disaster-proof education and with e-learning? So that's kind of like a really good question. Probably you're asking that already in your mind. Now, I have an acronym that I'd like to share with you. And these are the things that I have learned over the years on how we can get started in building a disaster-proof education. We can start with a PI. So PI is an acronym that stands for plan, implement, and evaluate. So these are the things that we need to focus on. You need to start planning for your e-learning initiative. You need to have the following aspects or look at the following aspects: objectives, capability of schools. You need to look at your goals. What are your goals and what are your objectives? What are you trying to achieve? You also need to assess your school's capability. This is part of planning. It's important to know that the technological and pedagogical capability of your school, your institution, your organization to deliver and implement remote teaching and learning, or the use of e-learning, or the use of any digital tools for teaching for that matter. Also included in planning is identifying the barriers and the constraints. You need to consider your learners' access to technology, not just the learners, but also the teachers and other school leaders. The internet access at home, these are the things that you need to also look at when you're planning your e-learning initiative. And of course, get to know your students. It's important to know your students' learning needs or learning styles and develop the right and appropriate approach for each of your learning needs. All right? And then, of course, teacher readiness. A lot of schools got caught flat-footed when the pandemic happened because most of us are not ready. So it's important to have a capacity building initiative and projects for your teachers so that they can be ready with the use of technology in teaching. So that's very important, coupled with training on pedagogy and content. So after planning, that's the time that you implement. And these are the aspects that we need to look at in the implementation. The content availability, the right tool, instructional design, and learning activities. It's always important to make sure that your content is readily available and accessible to your students in the digital platform that you're going to use. So it will help when your content aligns with your technology and pedagogy. So for example, if you're offering blended learning, you need to have an LMS that will support that particular type of instruction, or whether it's self-paced or hybrid type of learning. And then, of course, I mentioned also using the right tools. You need to have a closer look at the digital tools that you are using, or evaluate the digital tools that you want to use, their potential to be used for e-learning, for remote learning, for blended learning, for hybrid teaching. For example, your school's LMS, or if you don't have one, if you want to evaluate an LMS. So there are a lot of digital tools that are available to supplement e-learning, even in the worst case scenario. And one of the tools that helped me a lot, as I mentioned to you, I'm also a teacher and I've been using a learning management system for teaching. I use Neo LMS. So a learning management system is a platform that will allow teachers as educators to create and deliver our content easily, and that it is also easily accessed by students. So it also allows us to monitor the student engagement and participation, assess their knowledge, track their performance, even outside of the four walls of our classroom. That will be very helpful having an LMS. So an LMS, one of the LMS that I've been using for more than a decade now is Neo LMS. So Neo is a learning management system that supports asynchronous and synchronous learning, blended learning, micro-learning, self-paced learning, and even hybrid learning. So this is an LMS that I've been using for a very long time already. So Neo LMS allows teachers to create, manage, automate all of the learning activities, whether it's online, whether it's assessing students, whether it's collaboration or tracking the students' progress and achievements. You can create collaborative activities in Neo. You can gamify your courses and classes using the Neo's gamification features. You can even award certificates and badges. It has an instant analytics that will allow also you as a teacher to see how your students are progressing in their classes. Neo has a lot of assessments and activity feature that you can use also to assess your students' learning. So practically, it will allow you to develop also early intervention based on the data that's presented by the LMS to you. Now, some of the suggested guide questions that I'd like to share with you that's part of implementation when you're choosing a digital tools are the following. Always make sure that it's easy to implement. It offers a free trial. They have a support team that can support you in your implementation, that it has what it needs when it can answer what you need and what you're trying to achieve. Also ask yourself, does the tool possess the feature that you're looking for? And what are the technological constraints? So these are the things that you can consider. Once you have your tool already, you need to choose the right learning activities. Learning is virtual, can be virtual and remote, and you want to make sure that the platform that you're using for e-learning and all of the features can support the activities that you want to do with your students. So some of the recommended virtual activities are the following. So you can do online forums, online debate, weekly online group activities, even online exams, web conferencing, group chat, online free-form assessment, gamification, or competency-based learning. A lot of activities. There are a lot of activities that you can do virtually, as long as the digital tools that you're using is supporting all of these activities. So this is quite important. And then also another part of implementation is instructional design. So design your instruction based on the needs and learning requirements of your students, of your learners. Be concise, be precise, make sure that your design is easy, your content is easy to understand. That's very important, and that's part of implementation. So after implementation comes evaluation. We need to evaluate this e-learning initiative that we're doing and see whether we're successful or not. Evaluate for success. So that's very important. And I have 3 keywords here for you: guide, monitor, and adjust. After implementing your e-learning initiative and your e-learning activity, whether that's in your own classroom or whether that's done in the entire organization, make sure that you evaluate. Evaluate how you did. Evaluate what needs to be done and what needs to be adjusted. So that's very important. Also, guide the teachers and the students and other stakeholders, such as parents, on the process and what they need to do. It's very important. Monitor what's going on, keep track of progress, develop appropriate evaluation tools, develop effective feedback system, and create a help desk online. And then finally, make the necessary adjustment. You need to adjust what needs to be adjusted. So in short, what I'm trying to say is the right tool plus the right pedagogy plus the right strategy is a perfect formula for a disaster-proof education. And before I end my presentation, I'd like to share some of these practical tips for you on how in e-learning practical tips. A synchronous session is good. Do not overwhelm your students with too many online assessments and activities. Don't panic. Sharing is caring. help each other, have an open line of communication where teachers and students can communicate with each other and help each other as you move along with your e-learning initiative. And then finally, I'd like to share this last slide with you as an advice. Building a disaster-proof education can be challenging, but it can be done if we are prepared and if we embrace the growth mindset. And with that, I thank everybody for being here with me today and for listening. Thank you very much. I hope that you learned something in this presentation. Now we're ready for the Q&A, I guess. Thank you very much, everybody. Okay, so how to make, I think we have questions in the chat. How to make disaster-proof model possible if we do not know what will happen in this world. Exactly the reason why we need to do disaster-proof education. This is like what I mentioned, it's a proactive measure. We need to think in advance. We need to not truly forecast, but we need to be proactive and think of what might happen. Prepare for what might happen. We really don't know what's going to happen in this world, and it's always good to be prepared. So we didn't know that this pandemic will happen. Had we, some schools or most schools that I know who's been using or embracing e-learning before the pandemic, it wasn't hard for them when the pandemic happened. I experienced that personally because I came from a school who's been doing e-learning for the past decade, and it wasn't hard for us to adjust to what happened because we know how to conduct classes online, blended and self-paced. I hope that helps. Okay, another question: is there any kind of threat to teachers and students with regard to the way technology is being introduced in education system? Are we changing too fast without anticipating the outcome? The only threat that I could see would probably be our fear of embracing change. Means we won't be able to adapt to what's happening. You know, I know how you feel, and probably you're thinking, are we going to be replaced by technology already? Because the technology is here, and teaching can happen even if we're not inside the classroom. One thing I can assure you, teachers will never be replaced by technology. But probably teachers who doesn't want to embrace the use of technology are the ones who are facing kind of like that risk. Technology is here to stay, and we just need to embrace and adjust, adapt to these changes. Technology is our tool. It's our partner. It's not the end all and be all of education, but it's a great tool for us to be able to bring education into every place, every classroom, every household, and give our students access to education anytime, anywhere. We will not be replaced if that's the threat that you're thinking. Teachers will never be replaced by technology, ever. Why? Simply because the teachers are the ones teaching, the teachers are the ones creating the content, the teachers are the ones delivering the content, we're the ones monitoring the progress of our students, we're the ones facilitating, we're the ones delivering the content, and we're the ones who's making it happen for our students to learn. But technology is a great tool that will help us do that. Imagine if there's no tool for teaching and learning when the pandemic happened, then we'll have almost 2 years of no classes at all. So I hope that helps somehow give a concept and insights on disaster-proof education. Do we have any more questions? All right. So if we don't have questions, thank you very much, everybody. Assalamualaikum. Take care and stay safe.
Thank you so much for sharing such valuable inputs. It was a pleasure having you with us today.